The hunters arrive. The warning signs. Captain Marcus Reed stared at the holographic display floating above his desk, watching red dots disappear one by one from the star map. Each dot represented a Federation colony, and in the past week, 12 had gone completely silent. No distress calls, no final messages, just nothing. "Sir," Lieutenant Petra Novak called from the communications station, her voice tight with worry. "I'm receiving another emergency broadcast from the Altair system." Marcus walked over to her station, his boots echoing in the quiet command center of Research Station Omega-7. The station was small, home to only 43 scientists and support staff, positioned at the edge of Federation space to study cosmic phenomena. They weren't equipped for war, but war seemed to be coming to them anyway. "Put it through," Marcus ordered. The speakers crackled to life with a panicked voice. "This is Captain Torres of the cargo vessel, New Dawn. Something's out here. Something big. We've lost contact with 3 colonies in the past day. Whatever hit them, it's moving fast and leaving nothing behind. If anyone can hear this, stay away from the..." The transmission cut to static. The growing darkness. Engineer Tommy Brooks looked up from his maintenance panel, his young face pale. "Captain, I've been monitoring long-range sensors. There's something strange happening at the edge of our detection range." Marcus frowned. Tommy was fresh out of the academy, but he had sharp instincts. "Show me." The main screen flickered to life, displaying sensor readings from the past 72 hours. What Marcus saw made his blood run cold. A massive formation of ships was moving through space in a perfect line, systematically visiting every inhabited system in their path. "How many ships are we looking at?" Marcus asked. "At least 300, sir. Maybe more. They're huge, each one is the size of a Federation battlecruiser, but the design is completely unknown." Lieutenant Novak turned in her chair. "Sir, I've been trying to contact Earth Command for orders, but all I'm getting is static. It's like every Federation military frequency just went dead." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. In his 20 years of service, he'd never seen Earth Command go completely silent. Even during the worst crises, they maintained communication with their stations. The pattern emerges. "Tommy, show me the attack pattern again," Marcus said, studying the holographic display. The young engineer manipulated the controls, and the star map showed the mysterious fleet's movement over the past month. Each system they visited went dark exactly 6 hours after the ships arrived. "They're not random attacks," Marcus realized. "Look at this, they're following the major trade routes, hitting the most populated systems first." Petra pulled up another display. "Sir, I've been analyzing the few fragmentary transmissions we received before each system went dark. There's something else, the attacks only last about 2 hours. After that, the enemy fleet moves on, but nothing remains. No debris, no survivors, no trace that millions of people ever lived there." The command center fell silent except for the soft hum of the life support systems. Marcus had seen warfare before, but this was something different. This was systematic extermination on a scale that defied comprehension. "The fleet approaches. Captain." Tommy shouted, his voice cracking with fear. "They're here." The main screen shifted to show the edge of their solar system. Ships were emerging from hyperspace, dozens of them, sleek and dark like predatory fish. Each vessel was easily twice the size of the largest Federation warship, and they moved with an eerie, coordinated precision. "How long until they reach us?" Marcus asked, his training taking over despite the fear clawing at his chest. "At their current speed, about 8 hours, sir." Marcus looked around the command center at his small crew. These weren't warriors, they were scientists, engineers, researchers who had signed up to study stars and planets, not face an enemy that had already destroyed entire civilizations. "Petra, send out a general distress call on all frequencies. Maybe someone out there is still listening." "Already tried, sir." No response from anyone. The final transmission. Marcus made a decision that would haunt him if he lived to remember it. Open a channel to the approaching fleet. Sir. Petra looked shocked. If we're going to die, I want to know why. The communication system crackled, and then a voice responded, cold, mechanical, speaking perfect Federation standard, human vessel. Your species has been marked for consumption. Resistance is futile. Prepare for harvest. Who are you? Marcus demanded. What do you want? We are the devourers. We consume all life to fuel our expansion across the stars. Your species will feed our young, and your worlds will become breeding grounds for our fleet. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Tommy was shaking as he stared at his instruments. Captain, they're accelerating. Time to arrival now estimated at 4 hours. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of his wife and daughter back on Earth, wondering if they were already dead. When he opened them again, his resolve had hardened. Send one final message to anyone who might be listening, he ordered. Tell them what we've learned. Tell them the devourers are coming, and they show no mercy. As Petra transmitted their warning into the void, Marcus wondered if humanity would even survive long enough to receive it. The stars that had once seemed so beautiful now felt cold and hostile, hiding an enemy that treated entire civilizations like cattle. In the distance, the Devourer fleet continued its approach, patient and unstoppable, just as it had been for countless millennia. But what they didn't know was that this time, their prey had been watching and waiting too. The ancient warning. The discovery. Dr. Vincent Cross brushed dirt from the ancient stone tablet, his weathered hands trembling with excitement. After 30 years of archaeological work across the galaxy, he had never seen anything like the ruins buried beneath the surface of Kepler 442b. The symbols carved into the stone were unlike any known language, yet somehow they seemed familiar. Luna, come look at this, he called to his assistant. Archaeologist Luna Park scrambled down into the excavation pit, her blonde hair tied back under a protective helmet. She was young but brilliant, with an eye for patterns that had impressed Vincent from their first day working together. What is it, Doctor? She asked, kneeling beside the tablet. I think we've found something that predates every known civilization in this sector by thousands of years. Look at these symbols, they're not random. There's a mathematical progression here, almost like a countdown. Security Chief Anton Reeves watched from the edge of the pit, his hand resting on his sidearm. A former military man with graying temples and sharp eyes, he had been hired to protect the archaeological team from the planet's dangerous wildlife. But lately, he'd been more worried about threats from space. Doc, we need to talk, Anton called down. I just received a priority transmission from Federation Command. It's not good news. The spreading darkness. Vincent climbed out of the pit, wiping his hands on his work clothes. What's happening up there? Anton activated his portable communicator, and a holographic display showed the current state of Federation space. Red zones marked areas that had gone silent in the past week. The pattern was spreading like a disease. 17 colonies have gone dark in the past 5 days, Anton explained. Whatever's causing this is moving systematically through inhabited systems. Communication with Earth Command was lost 6 hours ago. Luna gasped. 6 hours. But that means. It means we might be on our own, Anton finished grimly. The last transmission spoke of massive alien ships that appear without warning and leave nothing behind. Vincent stared at the holographic display, then looked back at the ancient tablet in the excavation pit. A strange connection was forming in his mind. Anton, show me the timeline of these attacks. As Anton manipulated the display, Vincent saw the pattern. The attacks weren't random, they followed specific routes through space, always hitting the most populated systems first. Luna, bring up the translation software. I want to know what that tablet says. The ancient text. Working feverishly, Luna fed the symbols into their most advanced translation algorithms. The computer struggled with the ancient language, but slowly, patterns began to emerge. It's a warning, Luna whispered, her face pale as she read the translated text. Listen to this: when the star devourers return from the void, when civilizations fall like grain before the scythe, know that the time of testing has come again. Vincent felt his heart race. Star devourers. Keep going. They come in waves of darkness, consuming all life to feed their endless hunger. No weapon can pierce their shells, no army can stand against their numbers. They have done this before, across 1,000 worlds, for 10,000 years. Anton moved closer, his military instincts alert. Doc, this is describing exactly what's happening now. How is that possible? Luna continued reading, her voice growing more urgent. But hope remains in the silent guardians, those who watch from the shadows and prepare in secret. When the devourers wake from their long sleep, so too shall the guardians rise to meet them. The hidden truth. Vincent climbed back into the pit, his archaeological training taking over. If this tablet was authentic, it could rewrite everything they knew about galactic history. He began carefully examining the stone's composition and the wear patterns on the symbols. This isn't a reproduction or a hoax, he announced after several minutes of analysis. Carbon dating puts this tablet at least 10,000 years old, possibly older. But that's impossible, Luna protested. There were no spacefaring civilizations 10,000 years ago. Humanity was still developing agriculture. Anton's communicator crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The signal was weak and heavily encrypted, but the voice that came through made all three of them freeze. This is Admiral James Hawke of the Terra Defense Initiative. If anyone is receiving this transmission, know that the ancient protocols are now in effect. The Devourers have returned, just as the archives predicted. All Federation personnel are to report to designated safe zones immediately. Terra Defense Initiative. Anton frowned. I've never heard of that organization, and I've been in military intelligence for 15 years. The revelation. Vincent was studying the tablet with renewed intensity. Luna, look at this section we haven't translated yet. The symbols are different here, more complex. As Luna worked with the translation software, Vincent noticed something else. At the bottom of the tablet, carved in much smaller script, were symbols that looked almost familiar. Dr. Cross, Luna called, her voice shaking. You need to see this translation. The new text read, the Guardians were born from the stars, children of a distant world called Terra. They scattered across the galaxy, watching and waiting, preparing for the day when the ancient enemy would wake. They appear weak and peaceful, but within them burns the fire of their ancestors who first drove back the darkness. Anton stared at the tablet, then at his companions. Terra, that's the old name for Earth. Vincent felt pieces of a massive puzzle clicking into place. Luna, check the database. Cross-reference Terra Defense Initiative with any classified military projects from the past century. After several minutes of searching, Luna found fragments of information, heavily redacted files, budget allocations that didn't match any known projects, references to deep space installations, with no listed locations. It's like there's been a shadow organization operating parallel to the regular Federation military, she said. The funding alone suggests they've been building something massive. The Guardian's purpose. Anton's communicator activated again, this time with a different voice, older, more authoritative. This is General Isaac Stone of Terra Command. The Devourer fleet has reached the inner colonies. All civilians in the outer systems are to evacuate to the designated coordinates immediately. The time of silence is over. Vincent looked at the ancient tablet one more time, reading the final lines that Luna had just translated. When the children of Terra finally reveal themselves, the galaxy will see that humanity's greatest strength was never their weapons or their numbers, but their patience. For they alone among all species learn to wait, to watch, and to prepare for the enemy that sleeps between the stars. As the three of them stared at the ancient warning, they realized they were witnessing the unfolding of a plan that had been set in motion long before any of them were born. Humanity hadn't been caught off guard by the Devourers, they had been waiting for this moment for millennia. The question now was whether 10,000 years of preparation would be enough to face an enemy that had already consumed countless civilizations across the galaxy. Above them, in the darkening sky of Kepler 442b, ships began to appear, but these weren't the predatory vessels of the Devourers. These ships bore the markings of Earth, emerging from hiding places that had kept them secret for generations. The silent guardians were finally ready to fulfill their ancient purpose. The sleeping fleet. The hidden base. Admiral James Hawke stood in the command center of Titan Base, a massive installation carved deep inside an asteroid in the Kuiper Belt. For 47 years, he had called this place home, watching and waiting for the day that had finally arrived. The base was invisible to all sensors, protected by technology that bent light and energy around it like water around a stone. "Admiral," Intelligence Officer Rachel Stone called from her station. Her dark hair was streaked with early gray despite her young age, a result of decades spent studying classified files about humanity's greatest secret. "The Devourer fleet has reached the Saturn system. They're moving exactly as the ancient records predicted." James nodded grimly. Rachel was his daughter, though few people knew it. The Stone family had been guardians of this secret for 6 generations, ever since the first archaeological teams discovered the truth about humanity's origins on a dead world at the galaxy's edge. "What's the status of our fleet?" James asked. Pilot Derek Nash looked up from his flight control station. A lean man with steady hands and quick reflexes, he had spent the last 20 years training for battles that might never come. "All ships are powered and ready, sir. The crews have been in stasis rotation, but they can be fully operational within 3 hours." James walked to the observation deck and gazed out at what few humans had ever seen. Stretching through the asteroid field were thousands of ships, sleek, deadly vessels that incorporated technology from a dozen extinct civilizations. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, designed specifically to fight an enemy that most of the galaxy didn't even know existed. "The Awakening. Begin awakening sequence for all vessels," James ordered. "After 3 centuries of preparation, it's time to find out if we got it right." Rachel activated the base-wide communication system. Throughout the asteroid field, hidden installations began powering up. Lights flickered on inside ships that had been dark for decades. Automated systems started the process of reviving crews who had volunteered to spend their lives in preparation for this single moment. "Sir," Derek reported, "I'm receiving status reports from the fleet commanders. Admiral Patricia Chen on the Starbreaker reports her battle group will be ready in 2 hours. Captain Michael Torres on the Void Hunter says his stealth squadron is already moving into position." James felt a mixture of pride and fear. These men and women had given up normal lives to serve in a military that officially didn't exist. They had trained for battles against an enemy that had been sleeping for millennia, using tactics developed from studying the ruins of dead civilizations. "What about the ancient weapons?" James asked. Rachel checked her console. "Dr. Emma Rivers reports that all precursor artifacts are online and integrated with our weapons systems. The gravity disruptors are functioning within acceptable parameters." The gravity disruptors were humanity's greatest secret weapon, technology reverse-engineered from the ruins of a civilization that had fought the Devourers eons ago. Unlike conventional weapons that the Devourers could adapt to, gravity weapons attacked the fundamental structure of matter itself. "The truth about Earth." "Admiral," a new voice called from the communication station. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Defense Command." The main screen activated, showing a familiar face. General Isaac Stone, Rachel's grandfather and the man who had built this entire operation from nothing. "James, the Devourers have taken the bait. They're converging on Earth just as we planned. Phase 1 is complete." James felt his stomach tighten. Phase 1 had involved sacrificing dozens of colonies to convince the Devourers that humanity was just another helpless species. The guilt of those losses would haunt him forever, but without them, the enemy would never have committed their full force to the attack. "What's the status of the civilian evacuation?" James asked. "All essential personnel have been moved to the deep shelters. The surface cities are empty shells now, but the devourers don't know that. They think they're about to harvest 8 billion humans." Rachel looked up from her station. "Grandfather, what about the other Terra colonies? Are they safe?" The old general's face softened slightly. "The seed colonies are secure, Rachel. Even if we fail here, humanity will survive. But I don't intend to fail." Derek suddenly tensed at his station. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive hyperspace signatures. The main Devourer fleet is dropping out of FTL near Jupiter." The enemy revealed. The main screen shifted to show long-range sensor readings from the Jupiter system. What they saw made everyone in the command center fall silent. The Devourer fleet was enormous, over 2,000 ships, each one the size of a small moon. They moved in perfect formation, like a school of mechanical fish swimming through space. "My God," Derek whispered. "How did any civilization ever survive fighting these things?" "Most didn't," James replied grimly. "According to the archives, the Devourers have consumed over 3,000 intelligent species in the past 50,000 years. Only one civilization ever successfully fought them off. The Precursors," Rachel added. "Our ancestors." James nodded. The truth that only a few hundred humans knew was that Earth hadn't evolved humanity. Humanity had come to Earth as refugees, the last survivors of a civilization that had once spanned half the galaxy. They had hidden their true nature, lived as primitives for millennia, slowly rebuilding their technology while keeping watch for the enemy they knew would return. "The Devourers are beginning their approach to Earth," Derek reported. "Estimated time of arrival, 18 hours. James looked around the command center at his small staff. These people represented the culmination of humanity's longest and most secret project. Every decision, every piece of technology, every strategic plan had been building toward this moment. "The fleet emerges. Begin Phase 2, James ordered. All units are cleared to break silence." Throughout the asteroid field, cloaking systems deactivated. Ships that had been invisible for decades suddenly appeared on sensors. The hidden fleet of humanity began moving, thousands of vessels emerging from their concealment like predators stepping out of the shadows. "Fleet status report," James called. Rachel consulted her displays. "Battle Group Alpha is moving to intercept the Devourer vanguard. Battle Group Beta is positioning for flanking maneuvers. The Stealth Division is already moving ahead to begin reconnaissance attacks." Derek was monitoring the communications channels. "Sir, I'm receiving reports from our agents embedded in the Federation colonies. The Devourers are following their standard pattern, they're not expecting any resistance." James allowed himself a cold smile. The Devourers had grown overconfident after millennia of easy conquests. They had forgotten that their first and greatest enemy was still alive, still watching, still preparing. "Open a channel to all ships," James commanded. "This is Admiral Hawk to all Terra defense vessels. For 300 years, we have prepared for this day. For 300 years, we have watched our enemy grow strong while we grew stronger in silence. Today, we remind the galaxy why the Devourers once feared the name of humanity." He paused, looking out at the fleet that represented humanity's greatest gamble. "All ships, set course for Earth. It's time to go home." As the massive fleet began its journey toward the inner system, James thought about all the sacrifices that had brought them to this moment. Generations of humans had lived and died in secret, building weapons and ships they hoped would never be needed. But the ancient enemy had awakened, just as the precursor archives had warned they would. Now it was time to discover whether humanity's patience and preparation would be enough to face the darkness that had consumed so many civilizations before them. The sleeping fleet was awake, and the real war was about to begin. The first strike. The battle begins. Colonel Beth Murphy gripped the armrests of her command chair as the battleship Retribution dropped out of hyperspace near Mars. Around her, the bridge crew worked in deadly silence, their faces illuminated by the red glow of battle stations. Beth had trained for this moment her entire adult life, but seeing the Devourer fleet with her own eyes still took her breath away. "Tactical report," she ordered. Tactical Officer Ryan Walsh looked up from his displays, his young face grim with concentration. "Enemy fleet consists of 2,043 vessels, ma'am. They're maintaining standard formation, heavy destroyers in front, harvester ships in the center, command vessels at the rear." Communications expert Diana Foster turned from her station. "Colonel, Admiral Hawk is requesting final status reports from all battle groups." Beth activated her command display, showing the positions of both fleets. The human forces looked pitifully small compared to the massive Devourer armada, but she knew that appearances could be deceiving. Every human ship carried weapons that the enemy had never encountered before. "Tell the Admiral that Battle Group Charlie is in position and ready to execute Phase 3, Beth said. The enemy's confidence. On the lead Devourer vessel, Harvester Prime Vokrik studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. The human homeworld lay before them, ripe for consumption. The primitive species had tried to hide their population in underground shelters, but that would only delay the inevitable. "Begin harvesting operations," Vokrix commanded in the clicking language of his species. "Deploy seeker pods to locate all hiding places. Prepare the conversion chambers." His tactical advisor, War Leader Thek, pointed to the sensor displays. "Harvester Prime, we are detecting some vessels approaching from the outer system. They appear to be human military ships." Vokrix made a sound that might have been laughter. "How many?" "Approximately 800 vessels. They are small compared to our fleet." 800. Vokrix was genuinely surprised. Most species could barely manage a few dozen ships for their final defense. "Perhaps these humans have more spirit than we anticipated. No matter, deploy the Vanguard to destroy them quickly." The trap springs. Back on the Retribution, Beth watched as 300 Devourer ships broke formation and moved to intercept the human fleet. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. "Diana, open a channel to all ships. Authorization code, Silent Guardian." Diana's fingers flew over her controls. "Channel open, Colonel." Beth took a deep breath. The next few minutes would determine whether centuries of preparation had been enough. "All Terra defense vessels, this is Colonel Murphy. Execute Pattern Omega. Show them what happens when you corner a human." Throughout the human fleet, ships that had appeared to be retreating suddenly changed course. What the Devourers had taken for a panicked withdrawal was actually a carefully choreographed trap. "Ryan, fire all gravity disruptors on my mark," Beth ordered. The tactical display showed the approaching Devourer Vanguard. They were moving in their standard attack formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea that human scientists had spent decades studying the wreckage of their previous conquests. Mark. The Retribution's main weapons fired, but instead of the energy beams or projectiles that the Devourers expected, streams of twisted spacetime lanced out toward the enemy fleet. The gravity disruptors didn't just damage ships, they tore apart the fundamental structure of matter itself. The turning tide. The first Devourer ship to be hit by a gravity disruptor simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it had been compressed into a point of infinite density that immediately collapsed into nothingness. The ships around it were caught in the gravitational wake, their hulls crumpling like paper. "Direct hit." Ryan called out, his voice filled with amazement. "Enemy Vanguard is taking massive casualties." But the Devourers adapted quickly. The surviving ship spread out, trying to avoid the gravity weapons targeting systems. Return fire began to pour toward the human fleet, streams of exotic energy that could dissolve molecular bonds. "Shields are holding," Diana reported. "But they won't last long against this firepower." Beth opened a channel to the fleet. All units, execute maneuver Delta 7. Show them how humans really fight. What happened next would have been impossible for any other species in the galaxy. Instead of maintaining formation like civilized warriors, the human ships scattered in what appeared to be complete chaos. Each vessel began fighting independently, using tactics that seemed random and unpredictable. The Devourers had conquered 3,000 species, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to follow the logical rules of space combat. Human ships dove under the enemy formation, rolled above it, attacked from impossible angles, and retreated when victory seemed certain only to strike again from a completely different direction. The revelation. Harvester Prime, war leader Thek called urgently from his station. The human ships, they're not fighting like any species we've encountered. They're using irregular tactics, asymmetric warfare patterns. Our tactical computers cannot predict their movements. Vokrik stared at the battle display in growing alarm. His vanguard force was being systematically destroyed by a numerically inferior enemy. This had never happened before in 10,000 years of conquest. Deploy the second wave, he ordered. 600 ships. Crush them with overwhelming force. But as the second wave engaged, the same pattern repeated. The humans fought like no civilization the Devourers had ever encountered. They used the debris of destroyed ships as weapons, they rammed damaged vessels into enemy formations, they even used their own exploding ships as bombs. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to take pleasure in the chaos of battle. Where other species fought with desperate efficiency, the humans fought with what could only be described as joy. The ancient memory. On the Retribution's bridge, Beth felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that her ancestors had called battle fury. It was a genetic memory that went back to humanity's origins as the warrior scientists who had first driven back the Devourers eons ago. Colonel, Ryan called out, enemy casualties are at 40% and climbing. They're starting to pull back. Beth smiled grimly. The Devourers were learning what their predecessors had discovered long ago, that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, but their refusal to fight fair. Diana, patch me through to Admiral Hawk. Channel open. Admiral, this is Colonel Murphy. Phase 3 is successful. The enemy has taken the bait and committed their reserves. Recommend we proceed to Phase 4. Admiral Hawk's voice came through the speakers, confirmed, Colonel. All units, execute final protocol. It's time to remind the galaxy who the real predators are. Throughout human space, hidden installations that had remained dormant for centuries suddenly came to life. Weapons platforms emerged from asteroid fields, stealth ships decloaked throughout the Devourer formation, and most terrifying of all, the ancient dreadnoughts began their approach from the outer darkness. The Devourers had thought they were hunting helpless prey. They were about to discover that they had walked into the lair of sleeping dragons. The end begins. As Phase 4 commenced, Beth looked out at the chaos of battle and felt a deep satisfaction. For too long, humanity had been forced to hide their true nature, to pretend to be peaceful explorers rather than the inheritors of the galaxy's most successful warrior civilization. The Devourers had awakened something that had been sleeping for millennia, not just humanity's hidden fleet, but humanity's ancient hunger for battle. And once awakened, that hunger would not be satisfied until every last Devourer ship was nothing but scattered atoms drifting in the solar wind. The real war was just beginning, and the galaxy was about to remember why the name, human, had once struck fear into the hearts of even the most powerful civilizations. The Silent Guardians had kept their watch for 10,000 years. Now it was time to hunt. The Silent Guardians revealed. The final gambit. General Isaac Stone stood in the deepest command center on Earth, 5 miles beneath the surface in a bunker that had been carved from solid granite over 2 centuries ago. The walls were lined with screens showing the battle raging in space above, but his attention was focused on a single display showing the approaching Devourer mothership. Xenobiologist Emma Rivers looked up from her research station. General, the analysis of Devourer communication patterns is complete. They're calling for reinforcements from their home fleet. Captain Luke Harper, the youngest officer in the room, studied the tactical displays with growing concern. "Sir, if more Devourer fleets arrive, even our hidden reserves might not be enough." Isaac nodded grimly. At 84 years old, he was the last living human who remembered the discovery of the first precursor ruins. He had spent his entire life preparing for this day, but he knew that winning this battle was only the beginning. "Emma, activate the deep archives. It's time to show them who we really are." The truth revealed. Throughout the Sol system, ancient machines that had slept for millennia began to stir. On the moon, beneath the Mare Tranquillitatis, massive doors opened to reveal structures that predated human civilization by eons. On Mars, the polar ice caps cracked and split as hidden installations powered up for the first time in 10,000 years. "My God," Emma whispered, watching the displays. "The entire solar system is a fortress." Captain Harper stared in amazement as the sensors revealed the true scope of humanity's preparations. "How is this possible? How did we build all this without anyone knowing?" Isaac smiled sadly. "We didn't build it, Luke. We inherited it. Humanity didn't evolve on Earth, we crashed here as refugees, survivors of the last great war against the Devourers. For 10 millennia, we've been slowly awakening the technology our ancestors left behind." The main display shifted to show the approaching Devourer mothership. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. But as it approached Earth, something unexpected happened. The ancient weapons wake. The planet's surface began to change. What had appeared to be natural mountain ranges revealed themselves as massive weapon emplacements. The oceans themselves started to glow as underwater installations came online. Earth wasn't just humanity's home, it was the greatest fortress ever built. Harvester Prime, War Leader Thek called urgently aboard the Devourer mothership. "The human homeworld, it's not what it appears to be. We're detecting massive energy signatures across the entire planet." Vokrik studied the readings with growing unease. In 10,000 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. What kind of species turns their entire world into a weapon? His answer came in the form of beams of pure energy that lanced out from Earth's surface. These weren't the gravity disruptors the human fleet had been using, these were weapons that reached across spacetime itself, targeting the quantum structure of the Devourer ships. The dreadnoughts arrive. But the planetary defenses were only the beginning. From the outer reaches of the solar system, shapes began to emerge from hyperspace that made even the Devourer mothership look small. These were the dreadnoughts, the last surviving ships of the precursor civilization, kept in perfect condition for this moment. "Captain Harper," Isaac said quietly, "open a channel to the Devourer fleet. It's time they knew the truth." Luke's hands shook as he activated the communication systems. On screens throughout the Devourer fleet, the face of an elderly human appeared, but something in his eyes spoke of ancient knowledge and terrible power. "I am General Isaac Stone of the Terran Precursor Alliance," Isaac began, his voice carrying across space to every Devourer ship. 10,000 years ago, you destroyed our civilization and scattered our people across the galaxy. You thought you had won. You were wrong. The final battle." Aboard the mothership, Vokrix felt something he had never experienced before, fear. The tactical displays were showing impossible readings. The human ships weren't using technology that should exist. They were using weapons that his species had thought were destroyed forever. "The precursors," he whispered. "But they're extinct. We made sure of that." Isaac's voice continued, "We survived by hiding, by pretending to be primitive, by letting you grow overconfident. While you slept between feedings, we rebuilt our strength. While you hunted helpless prey, we prepared for war." The dreadnoughts opened fire, and the universe seemed to scream. These weapons didn't just destroy matter, they reached into the quantum foam of spacetime itself and unraveled the very concept of existence. Devourer ships didn't explode, they simply ceased to have ever been. Captain Harper watched in awe as humanity's true power was finally revealed. Sir, the Devourer fleet is in full retreat. But Isaac shook his head. No, Luke. They're not retreating. They're running. And we're going to make sure they remember why they should never come back. The hunt begins. Throughout human space, the hidden fleets that had waited in darkness for centuries finally emerged. Ships that had been disguised as asteroids, space stations that had pretended to be uninhabited, weapons platforms hidden in the hearts of gas giants, all of them revealed their true nature. Emma looked up from her station. General, I'm receiving reports from across the galaxy. Human colonists on Federation worlds are revealing their true identities. They're not colonists, they're observers. We've had agents watching every major civilization for generations. Isaac nodded. The Devourer home fleet will be here within a year. When they arrive, they'll find that humanity has been waiting for them. Every world they've attacked, every species they've consumed, we've been there, watching, learning, preparing. The main screen showed the retreating Devourer forces, but Isaac knew this was far from over. The real war was just beginning. But for the first time in 10,000 years, humanity was fighting as themselves rather than hiding behind a mask of primitive innocence. The New Dawn. As the last Devourer ships fled the Sol system, Isaac allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The plan that had taken millennia to prepare was finally in motion. Humanity's true nature had been revealed, not as the peaceful explorers they had pretended to be, but as the inheritors of the galaxy's most advanced civilization. Captain Harper, he said, send a message to all human forces throughout the galaxy. The time of hiding is over. The precursors have returned, and we have a promise to keep. Luke looked confused. What promise, sir? Isaac smiled, and for a moment his aged face showed the fierce joy of his warrior ancestors. We promised the galaxy that we would protect it from the darkness between the stars. It's time to hunt the Devourers to extinction, just as we should have done 10,000 years ago. As Earth's hidden fleet spread out across the galaxy, carrying weapons that could reshape reality itself, the balance of power shifted forever. The Devourers had awakened something that had been sleeping in the depths of space and time. They had awakened humanity's ancient hunger for justice. Epilogue, the Silent Watch continues. Years later, the galaxy would remember this day as the moment when the Silent Guardians finally revealed themselves. The Devourers, once the most feared force in the universe, became the hunted. Their home fleets were found and destroyed, their breeding worlds were cleansed, their very existence was methodically erased from the galaxy. But humanity's vigil didn't end with the Devourer's defeat. The Silent Watch continued, with human agents monitoring every corner of the galaxy for new threats. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but as long as humanity remained vigilant, no force would ever again threaten the peaceful civilizations under their protection. The precursors had returned, and the galaxy was safe. The end.